Hello out there. Welcome back to another Weekend Kickoff brought to you by Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems. We are ready for Ohio State at Penn State. We reshuffled the schedule around. Iowa was not actually a big game, right? We had to kick it back a week.
I think at the beginning of the year, everyone was circling it. Well, everyone was excited to get Iowa back on the schedule, get them back in the horseshoe. It had been a little while.
Get revenge from
revenge tour.
Circle the game, and guess what? It was a dud.
It was a dud, but I knew that was going to happen. So we talked to Bryant. We said, you know what? Ohio State, Penn State, top 15 matchup. We'll get Berm down here early. We'll hit the road to State, Happy Valley the next day. We'll be ready to go. And instead, we don't even let Berm on the show because we just replaced him with the real Penn State expert, Bill Landis, Bobby Carpenter, Zach Boren, I'm Austin Ward. So here we go. It's coming. It's not a whiteout. It's not at noon. What's it like to go to this place, though? The whole experience, Zach. I know it's a fine hotel accommodation.
It is. You hit the nail on the head. That you ask me how State College is, that's the first thing that goes in my head is the hotel. It is, think of a Ramada Inn.
Okay.
And the accommodations and the accommodation hold on. And the accommodations at the Ramada Inn might be better. Okay, so it is a Ramada though. You go outside to get to your room.
It's a motel.
It's motel, not a hotel. Yeah. And it's it's one of those things that it just makes the whole trip though, because you get there, it's like, oh my God, this is really where we're staying. I remember, Friday night you always go to an area where they play a movie, they kind of guys playing cards, they've got all nutrition set up. And I remember every time going back to my hotel room, call it at 9:30 at night, the parking lot is wild. Like an all-out party, and it's Penn State fans, and they are blaring music. It's like they are tailgating till 4 a.m, and they are boozing like crazy, and they're yelling at you as you're walking to your room, and it just sets the tone for the entire weekend. And you wake up, and you're like, holy cow, I thought you went to sleep, but no, they're still outside playing music and doing everything else. So it was crazy. I actually played there twice, both of them being night games.
They haven't had a non-night game since 2009. They haven't had a noon game since 2001.
Was 2009? At 2009, I remember being a night game.
No, it was like 3:30.
Okay, 3:30. Second half was a night game. So that's why
after daylight savings.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So that's probably why it felt like a night game, because I remember late in the game. That's when Ray Small took a punt return back, and
so that was the one play he made.
Yeah, and Terrell Pryor was his first time going back to Penn State. I remember them like absolutely hating him, but it's a great stadium. It's actually a massive stadium. Also, the locker room accommodations are terrible. You're right next to the concession stand.
You have to walk underneath. They have like a yellow rope, and there's like people. It's like a high school game.
No. You're in the concession stand. Yeah. Your locker room is next to a concession stand. The only thing holding you back are like the silver metal barricade.
They've got some chain link fence up there.
That's it. Yeah. It's crazy. It's wild.
It's easy. They can slide a hot dog through there.
Though. Old ladies are yelling at you. I mean, you're walking through. I'm like, man, this is wild.
They can touch you. There's like a 15 feet runway from the cage fence to the locker room, and literally the people that are ordering hot dogs can touch you.
Do they sell beer down in Happy Valley, Austin?
They do not.
Yeah,
not yet.
They don't?
No, not yet.
Oh, good. Because, I mean, if you could drink beer there, that would be a really bad – I mean, because it's from here to the wall. It's a nice little hike to get through there, and they have like the little yellow like golf rope. There's like somebody holding, keep them back.
Stay back.
And the I mean, I'm sure they're fine officers of the peace, but the Penn State Highway Patrol aren't really like vigorously trying to keep everybody back.
They only protect and serve Pennsylvanians.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, so it makes sense. But one of the other things, so I guess now, Zach, they said there's a Wyndham there that they're staying at that's a lot nicer. It's newer.
Oh.
And a lot nicer means like you probably went from like an F to a C. You told your dad you're doing better in class. And so it's not bad. But one of the things about the Ramada, I don't know if you ever remembered this, and you probably weren't in one of these rooms, but there's some of the guys that still have to stay there because the Wyndham isn't very big, like some of the EQ staff and support staff. They have curtains against the wall, and there's a light behind them. And it's part of your lights. So you turn it on. You go to open the curtains, and there's just a light with bricks underneath it. There's no window, which I don't know by code. There's no way you could probably build that hotel today. And if they remodeled it, they'd have to bring it up to code, so they have to eliminate those rooms. But there is literally a windowless room, but there's curtains there, like as if hold up. And there's light because there's a light on the other side. It's just like an offi's light that's hanging down.
Yeah. In case of fire, jump through the bricks like the Kool-Aid Man.
He's strong. He's really strong.
Was that your finest memory of traveling to Happy Valley there, Bob?
No, well, the finest memory we had, it's just so terrible. Because Happy Valley sits at elevation. It's a short runway. Obviously, it's not a big commercial airport. And my senior year, we played there in 05, which was the first whiteout they ever had. And they're like, clouds might be low, this and that, and we may have to go to Harrisburg. So God bless Bob Tucker. He's passed away. He was our football ops guy, but he was just a former football coach. I was very animated and vocal about how poorly our operations went that weekend. We ended up losing the game. It cost us a shot at potentially a national championship. And we didn't get to that aforementioned Ramada until about 9:30, 10 o'clock. The clouds were low. We waited. We sitting at Rickenbacker waiting. And finally,
Did you fly to Harrisburg?
Fly to Harrisburg.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why didn't we just do this at the beginning and leave earlier? And we're busing. I'll never forget this. And Trust brought this up. He's saying, Bobby, you were so mean to that bus driver. We're leaving the Harrisburg airport. It's probably like 5 o'clock. I haven't eaten since noon. It was terrible. When you're young like that, you need to eat all the time, trying to just wasting away. And I'm following our driver, and we all of a sudden stop. I'm like, why are we stopping? There's nobody here. And I look through the front, and this dude had dead-ended us into the parking lot. There was nothing but grass in front of us. So we had 4 charter buses that they all had to subsequently back up, which took like another half hour to literally back everybody up in the parking lot. Turn us around. And then we got to do we got to take the pleasureful drive that everybody loves from Harrisburg to Happy Valley. Which,
it's like an hour, isn't it?
Oh, it was like an hour and 50. And we're winding all around, this and that. And we pull in. The food is cold. They're like, just go straight in, eat, go back to your rooms. And it was a night game, so it wasn't awful. But I'm like, I haven't eaten in 10 hours. There was no snacks, no waters. Tress may have yelled at me on the bus. It's the infamous story where it's the only time I've ever heard him drop an F-bomb. Ooh. Yeah, it was directed absolutely at me. I was so loud and voicing my displeasure about our situation that we were in. And yeah, we ended up losing the game. I think we held them to like 180 yards on offense or 200, something crazy. We had an interception or a fumble inside the 20. They scored on that, and we lost like 13-7 or something.
I remember my senior year, we were flying in there, and we had bad rain. And because the landing strip is so short with the plane that we have, if they have any kind of precipitation or stuff like that, you got to fly to Harrisburg. And thank God we didn't have to fly to Harrisburg and flew into State College.
It's terrible, man. I mean, it would like literally be like flying
to Cleveland for Ohio State.
But that's too easy of a drive on 71. It would be like flying into Coshocton. Coshocton was like an hour and 50 minutes away. I'm serious. It was terrible. You're driving. That's what my dad. I took a visit to Penn State. I went there for the spring game my junior year. My dad looked at me. I fell asleep, and he goes, I counted 18 dead deer since we've entered Pennsylvania. This is ridiculous. And then we get off. It's like right in between 70 and 80. And we drive there, get wind through those like coal roads, backcountry roads, and like he goes, "I'll come to 2 of your games a year here. That's all. That's all I can promise." He's like, "If this is where you want to go, God bless you, go for it." He goes, "But your mom and I will come when you play Ohio State, come when you play Michigan." He's like, "I'm not making this drive on a weekly basis. This is terrible."
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Just like
that started off good.
Yeah,
huh?
we're talking about. I was just going to ask Bill if he did any of that Friday night tailgating at the Ramada.
No, never at the Ramada. 05 was before I got there, but I was a student in 09. I was at that game. We had tickets in the north end zone, so we were behind you guys as you were warming up, and it was Terrell's first game in there, and me and my buddy were just like in awe of how big Terrell was, just like staring up at him.
Is the north end the low end?
Yeah.
The low end, yeah.
But no parties at the Ramada.
Okay. Dude, the south end being the high end, when they would play Zombie Nation and start jumping
wild.
out, I was sitting there watching this thing, and I'm like, I'm about to watch like 20,000 people just get killed as this thing collapses. I'm not kidding you. You watched the movement on it, Zach. You could see it from the field.
I know.
It's moving like a foot and a half.
What people don't realize is you walk into the Big House, and I know there's probably a bunch of Ohio State fans have been to Big House. You walk in there, you're like, man, it feels
flat.
Shallow. Yeah. It's flat. You're just kind of like, I walked in there a couple weeks ago. I'm like, there is still no way they sit 100,000 in here. Like, no way.
What were you doing there?
It was Ohio State's bye week. I was scouting.
Scouting.
So Ryan Day sent me up there. Yeah.
Did your wife drag you up there?
Yeah, she did. Ohio State's bye week.
Did you put on a McNamara jersey?
No. I was wearing all black. It was like a funeral. So but you walk in there and you're like,
funeral for James Franklin.
Yeah, and you're like, this is small, dude. You go into Penn State, it's a monster stadium. I think Ohio State's a big stadium, Penn State looks bigger than Ohio Stadium. I mean, It is tall. It's on top of you. It is a cool place.
It's the world's biggest erector set.
It is. So, my dad called it that, the erector set. He's like, I don't know who engineered this. It doesn't look stable, but somehow it always stands out.
Yeah. Well, the press box will be the first thing to fall. Probably will on Saturday at like 3 o'clock. We'll see. When there's an actual game going on, let's assume that Ohio State doesn't have any of these travel problems. Who are some of our Bryant Heating and Cooling players to watch, Buckeyes to watch, guys who you think, Bob, have to shine on Saturday for the Buckeyes to stay unbeaten?
Well, first, I think guys will probably shine. The one place that Penn State on offense is not very good because they have skill position players that were recruitable guys to Ohio State, and they always typically have that. You look at tight ends, with Freiermuth and Gesicki. You look out wide with the receivers that they've had. Some really talented players out there in the NFL. They've had good running backs, a couple of guys, Miles Sanders, Barkley, Saquon Barkley. I mean, they've got dudes all those positions. And I was sitting there today talking to someone at Ohio State, and I think there's like 13 active Ohio State offensive linemen currently in the NFL. I doubt there's 4 from Penn State. So the offensive line,
Shipley being one of them,
yes.
Still probably.
So I'm like, the offensive line is not great there, and that is where you look at this. Hall, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison's playing well. I mean, your guy Javonte Jean-Baptiste. These guys, they need to be able to feast.
I'm a big JJB guy.
Listen, hey, he's had like 3 or 4 sacks this year. That's then the stats.
He was credited with them. Yes,
the numbers are the numbers, irrefutable. Okay,
you're right.
But they've had guys that have had success. So I look at this. It's a defensive line game. If they're not dominating up front, there's a big time issue because other places, Penn State will make some plays, and that is why when they play teams of lesser ability that they were able to get movement on, their skill position players took over. They played Michigan. Michigan's good up front. They didn't give them those lanes and those holes and that give time to their quarterback. And all of a sudden now Clifford looks like just a guy, and the running backs have no room to run. And so it's the defensive line to me that'll be the ones that'll be the tone setters. All those guys up front, you pick them, let them go play.
Defensive line, Bill.
I think Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Joey Porter is going to be like a big time battle. And I don't think
their dads will be out there fighting each other.
maybe. I don't.
It's the genetics. It's the genetics bowl.
Yeah. We've seen Marvin win a lot. I think he's going to have trouble winning as consistently as he has in that matchup, which I think puts a lot of pressure on Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming to take advantage, I think, of the attention that Marvin's going to get. That's a Philadelphia kid that Penn State recruited a little bit. I think he's number 1 on the scout sheet for them. They have other good guys in the secondary there. There's their corner opposite. Joey Porter Jr. is pretty good. They got a good safety, Jair Brown. It's not going to be easy for Emeka and Julian, but I think Julian stretching the field, taking the top off, Emeka over the middle, which I think will be available because Penn State pressure so much. They like the pressure at the expense of being a sound defense, which is kind of crazy, and it didn't work to their advantage against Michigan, but I think a guy like Emeka can take advantage of that too. So I think those 2 guys have to have big games. I don't know what Marvin's going to do. I'm super excited to watch it, but if Emeka and Julian don't show out, I think the offense might have a problem.
I'm curious if Marvin's a lot like his dad. Physically, they're obviously different sides, but personality-wise, he's very reserved. Maybe he has a little more personality than his dad, who didn't talk at all. I wonder if Peasy Jr. is like Peasy Sr., because Peasy Sr., guys who played with him.
He's got some of that shankability.
Shankability, and he would go out night before the game, and he's a 2-bottle of wine guy coming back into the team meeting, ready to get lit and ready to get it going. So I don't know if PZ Jr. is on that level yet, but there were some legendary stories from him when he was in Pittsburgh and then later in Miami, which were even better, about him getting up and giving speeches in the team meeting room, a little sauced up.
We've definitely seen that Marvin Harrison Jr. has taken that work ethic from his father every Tuesday in there with that Monarch machine.
Oh,
so we'll see.
That's his girlfriend.
Sometimes it's past. Yeah,
he swiped right on that.
No, it's not a girl. He's married to the Monarch.
Didn't Joey get an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on the first play against Michigan? Didn't he hit somebody late and got a flag?
He did. Yeah. He did. Yeah. Very first play. Yeah. You're right.
I wonder where he learned it.
Very first play. Yeah, you're right. That is how that game started.
Oh, that's why you were scouting up there, Zach.
I was. Yeah, you just took my mojo, my little shtick. Yeah, you took it. So I guess it's on me, right?
It's on you.
Coming into tonight and thinking about this game, and as the week gets closer, you kind of start getting a little nervous. Just being a big game, right? No matter what. This whole time, I've thought it's a defense line game, right? Because Sean Clifford is not Sean Clifford if you put pressure in his face, and we all know that. And, we could sit here and say, hey, you're going on the road. You got to have a sound defense. We could say Tommy Eichenberg. We could say the back end because Penn State does have some athletes. Bob hits the nail on the head. They've always had some really good wide receivers, some great running backs, some great tight ends. And we've seen what these corners for Ohio State have done this year when they've gotten tested. And there's been some times where they've gotten roasted. Well, those big plays on the road are magnified. And so as a defensive line, you have to get to Sean Clifford. Plus, they want to run the football. Nick Singleton, some of those guys, they're freshman running backs. They want to establish the run for Sean Clifford. From a defensive line standpoint, if they get after that Penn State offensive line and can dominate, I think it's a completely different game. But since Bob already took it, I'm going to the other side of the football. Ohio State's offensive line. You have to be able to run the football. Penn State, where is their biggest strength? It's in the secondary. Their secondary could go toe-to-toe with Ohio State's and has just as good athletes. And so guess what? You can't count on Marvin Harrison and Mecca Buka and Julian Fleming to go out there as basically sophomores and expect to win this game and win matchup after matchup. Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, that offensive line has to be able to run the football on the road and dominate that game up front.
What did you think of Penn State's defensive line when you saw it in person?
Bad. Very bad.
It's amazing because they used to always be good.
They were so bad. And, it's funny. After that game, it gave me, like, nightmares because I just thought about the game last year, right, where Michigan's offensive line just bulldozed our front seven, and it seemed like the same exact thing. And so, I hope it's one of those things where Penn State just isn't strong, and it's not that Michigan's offensive line is that good, but they manhandled that game. I mean, J.J. McCarthy, he threw a pick six. He wasn't throwing anything special. Blake Corum ran for, I think, 200 yards against them, right?
Yeah, when you don't have contain and you can just run outside and run down the field on third and one.
No doubt, but Michigan was still creating gaps. Yeah. They were creating gaps against that front seven, and so our offensive line, we saw it against Iowa, right? I mean, Michigan can't really throw the ball. They ran the football against Iowa and were able to squeak out a win. Granted, we had a 44-point win, but we did it by throwing the ball down the field. I don't think we're going to be able to do that against Penn State.
All right. Those were all such good points. There's only really one thing left that we can talk about. Cameron Brown, I do not expect will play this week as he's dealing
Let's say it's accurate.
A lower body setback. So Denzel Burke, I think maybe he's trending in the right direction. We'll see. This will be a much stiffer test than any of these guys in the Ohio State secondary.
How about Herbie?
Herbie Hancock played very well last week.
Big physical corner.
Jordan, don't call me Herbie Hancock. Yeah. He's got 1 week under his belt now where he can try and build on that moving forward. J.K. Johnson, we've seen.
Brown.
Those guys are going to have to get it done out there. Penn State has some dudes, and if I don't believe that Sean Clifford's going to get time against the Rushmen, but we'll see if he does. Those are going to be some key one-on-one matchups on the perimeter that will be worth watching.
Can we get a post-game presser where James Franklin talks about aspiring to be on the level of Ohio State as a program again?
I think it's pretty much – we'll make some score predictions at the end. I think it's pretty much a guarantee that will happen.
Have you guys ever seen Impractical Jokers? Yeah. Of course you have, right? I think we should all write up questions that Berm has to go to the post-game press conference and ask. You know how they go? You know how they stand up and say, you have to ask this? I think we should give it to Berm to go in there and have to ask.
James, would you rate this as an elite performance for your program?
I think really more like, James, you were referred to as sophomoric. I would say you're probably more of a junior by now. You've been here, 8-9 years. We probably ascended to that level.
Yeah, and nobody wanted you to stay, but here you are. We're going to.
They paid you to stay anyway.
Yeah, great job for Jimmy Sexton there. We're going to take a break here, reset. We're going to bring the whiteboard in.
He gets like a 5 to 10% rip on that, so good for him.
Yeah, he made out quite well. That's his job. We're going to put Zach and Bobby again up on the whiteboard. It worked well the first time. We're going to try it again.
Did it?
Tonight. It was great. People loved it.
It was good.
See? I told you. So we're going to try round 2. Bob's trying to talk himself out of it now, but he can't. It's too late. We're going to do it right now.
All right, Bob. We're here. We're going to break down Penn State's famous read option right here. In the big house, this was the one big play that they hit against Michigan up front, right? I'm going to draw up what they try and do offensively. Okay. You're kind of going to talk through how the Buckeyes are going to defend this defensively. Obviously, they are trying to keep this guy on block. This is who they're reading, right? So they're all going to work up here. This guy going to come in here, work up there. right? These guys are working both of them up to the backer. Y is right here. Tailback is hitting this shoulder square, trying to get his read. Quarterback, his eyes are right here on the defensive end. If defensive end crashes, quarterback is going to keep it, which is what we saw in the big house. And Sean Clifford went 60-something yards. If a defensive end stays out, tailback's gonna take it. Here's what they do on this side. In order to keep this backer away from this, a lot of times they'll bubble this guy and have him come here. So this backer has got to honor the bubble.
It's the bandit.
The bandit, you're right. The bandit's got to honor the bubble here because we have seen Sean Clifford, when he keeps the ball, instead of coming here, will throw the bubble out here if the bandit stays tight.
So a couple different things they're going to do. And they have a few different change-ups here, and like that's part of it. Number one, you can play it. If you play at base, you're going to put this guy in a bad situation. Then you have to pick who's going to beat blocks. Is he going to try to cheat and come back in, or guy's going to fall off? And so it makes it a very difficult situation. So there's a couple of different avenues you can have. Number one, we're showing a 2-deep safety look right here. Ohio State runs a lot of 2-deep safeties. They also run some single high or one safety deep. So they're going to bring one of these guys down and fill them in. And what that's going to do, it's going to change the gap responsibilities of the linebackers. So one of the things they can do is run, they call it a single high or 3 deep, and it's buzz. So the safety will come down inside. So as you see, they're comboing here and coming up to the will. So what they'll do right here is, this is these steel chambers. He would slide out late. You would slide him in here. He'll have the flat responsibility. He'll have the hook and pass. Free safety goes to the middle. But now the lineman's chasing the linebacker who's running away. And now this guy's sitting there on block. So that's one of the options. Where's that little
eraser?
Yeah.
There you go.
Biggest eraser ever. So now that's one of the options that they have. And so that typically you get a Latham Ransom coming down. Very solid tackle. That's probably his best attribute in this defense, is he's very fundamentally sound and a solid tackler. So that's one thing that they can do. Based upon coverage, they'll change it up a little bit as who is coming down. They can bring
the will back in there.
All right, so what you're going to see here, we talked about how they can manipulate it with coverage, going from 1 high to 2 high. As we draw the will back in here, my handwriting is atrocious. So they could always bring the free safety down here as well. They bump these guys out, so he would be a free hitter, and they can change some stuff here. So those are 2 of their options, going single high. What that also does, though, when you do that, as we mentioned, Penn State has some good receivers. You're going to put these guys on islands outside. And so that's going to make them not have help over the top, and so they're going to have to come up and play big. That's Burke, that's Hancock. Who else we got there? Cam Brown's down. Jair Brown.
Yeah.
J.K. Johnson. So those guys will be out there. They'll potentially be on islands. One of the other things you can do is predetermine what you're going to do with this guy. And so when they read them, they're waiting for you to flat foot, and you have to make a decision. And so then the problem is this guy is going to have to see who they take. What you could say is you predetermine, and in this situation, you are always crashing and you're always going to take the tailback. That allows the Mike backer to play slow, and he can play behind this block because that's a really tough block to get to, and potentially get back here. Or you can switch it up. That's generally the way to go. The problem is if you do that, you can lose. They can run some sort of boot action, and then you'll lose contain.
And Bob, this is something that normally, so people know, normally this is in the not scouting report, but this is in the game plan, right?
Yeah.
From a defense. Say, hey, we're calling this defensive end, this is what you're doing. In this defensive end, this is what you're doing. Another thing that I know when he plays down that he's going to try doing is a defensive end, and this call on the defense is going to try and play through the tackle. Instead of letting him go up through, he's going to play through him to try and slow him down to get up to the mic, but also show the read to the quarterback that he's crashing.
Yeah, and so that's a big deal. We talk a lot about this with ends when they're talking about holding tight ends off the ball to make sure that they're not vertical threats in the passing game. But you see this now where defensive linemen will make sure they're very heavy on this guy and to make sure he doesn't climb. The problem is when you do that, if it is a true drop back pass, you're going to lose a bit of that pass rush. So these are the games that you have to try to figure out here. Do you do it with coverage, with these safeties coming down, and then putting your corners on islands and confusing them that way? Do you predetermine possibly who is going to take it? Or, your third option then because so much of a zone read as you try to figure this out, these RPO zone reads and everything are, erase this, try to clean this up. I mean, folks, the one good thing, like we're trying to keep this clean for you. Most coaches, they just keep writing and they just keep writing over things. Like, you understand what I'm saying right here? Like, no, I don't, because all this is just a mess now. It does all the same thing. So get this stuff back together. And so like the third, like you can do coverages, you can predetermine it, strong and weak. And then really the last thing is you can pressure it. Now you have to have rules to make sure guys know what's going. But you saw last week, there was a lot of pressure that was coming internally by the linebackers. They can bring guys off the edge. They can stunt the front, because when you do that and you bring these guys here, it's going to eat up gaps. It'll allow the linebackers to play back behind and eat this stuff up. You can bring the bandit, go over here and go man-to-man on that situation. And so that will force these reads to happen quicker, because what they're doing, if you're the quarterback and you're reading this end, you see him crashing. Oh, that's a keep. Oh, bam. I just got smoked by the bandit. He was coming on a blitz because he's not a read guy for me. Or I have to read that and then try to throw it out here. And you better make sure that whether this is Ronnie Hickman or Latham Ransom, they're hauling to get over here to make this play. So that is the cat and mouse. And Jim Knowles does a great job with it.
Well, also, you hit the nail on the head with that, because now to as an offensive standpoint, right, and to kind of wrap this up, there are two things that can absolutely kill this. Within the defensive standpoint, when you're going against kind of an RPO offense or read option offense, the linebackers you want to keep free. You want them to be your runners. They're going to make things right. They can read, they can react. Those are the guys, when you have offensive linemen in their face, A, they get pissed off, and two, it makes it so much harder for them to read what's going on in front of them. You do two things. You slant the defensive line like you talked about, which is what you'll see. The other thing that we already talked about with the defensive line being so huge is because penetration kills us. If these defensive tackles can come through here and create penetration, next you know that double team's gone, and these guys are fighting the defensive tackle, and they can't get up to the Mike linebacker. These guys, if the tackle creates penetration, these guys are fighting the defensive tackle and can't get up to the will. Absolutely kills the play.
And so that's how you stop the zone read RPO that Penn State has so classically run, I don't know, for the last 6, 7, 8 years. And they've had some success with it, but this defense is physical up front. D-line is very good. The safeties, sure tacklers. There's going to be times where a guy gets in the open field. Can you get him down? It's a 3-yard gain. You line up at 2nd and 7, you go play again. And you have to make sure that these guys, the two linebackers, are able to direct traffic and make all of these calls so that the front end and the back end are ultimately connected in one continuous piece.
And constantly give them different looks throughout the game, which you hit the nail on the head with that as well. Jim Knowles likes to play cat and mouse. He's going to constantly be giving these guys different looks.
Inspired design. Ultra quiet operation. To you, it's a Bryant Evolution cooling system. To us, it's the ultimate machine.
All set.
For the dealer nearest you, visit Bryant.com.
Another fantastic breakdown on Weekend Kickoff, brought to you by Bryant Heating and Cooling Systems from Bob and Boren. You guys just make us feel so much smarter.
Is that what it's called? Bob and Boren?
I don't know.
Bob and Boren's board.
The BB
go.
board?
Yeah.
The triple B? I don't know.
Yeah.
I like it.
Triple B. We got more time to work on it, I
Workshop
guess.
that?
Yeah, we got plenty of time, right?
We'll get on the board and workshop some ideas. Brainstorm.
20 brainstorming ideas. It's another B. And Bill's right there, too. Bees are wild. That's what the show is all about.
Bees are wild.
Bryant also starts with B, and the Bryant Heating and Cooling Hot Takes. It is that time. Bill, you have to go first.
Oh, boy.
Because Zach loved yours so much from week 1 that he hasn't forgot about it.
I can't remember what it was. What was it?
You stole. Well,
I'm sure it was wrong.
You stole the tight Michael Mayer's.
Michael Mayer was going to get like 4 touchdowns and like 200 yards receiving.
He was going to turn to John Mayer.
Did that not happen?
No, it definitely did not.
I don't believe it. Your hottest take for this game.
So maybe this is Berm getting to my brain a little bit, but I'm starting
Negative Berm?
No, well,
we need a segment called Negative Berm.
This is positive, although he's very anxious for this game. I'm starting to buy a little bit of Cameron Martinez momentum. And
jeez, you are on
coming into this season, we talked a lot about Tanner McAllister and whether or not at some point someone would take that job from him. And I'm not predicting that's going to happen.
His 2-interception game last week was bad.
Well, it wasn't bad, but they did throw the ball right to him. I think he's played very well. I think probably Cameron Martinez is a better cover guy than him, like man-to-man cover guy.
Of course, I would concur with that.
And I think that's going to become a premium at some point. It might even happen in this game. So I think this is the game where we start to see Cameron Martinez cut into those snaps at nickel a little bit, and that position becomes much more of a 50-50 rotation between those two guys than dominated by Tanner McAllister, who's played very well. I'm not saying he's played poorly. I think they're going to need Cam's skill set moving forward.
That's a hot take.
Guy just got two interceptions and
Scorch it. Oh,
and I want to bench him.
Bill's Benson. He's a tough coach right there.
The standard is the standard.
Yeah, I don't know what is the standard. 3 picks? Tell me.
First time Ohio State player has had multiple picks in a game since 2009. Yeah. That's 11 years, 12 years, if I'm counting right.
I don't know if you are. It sounds like
11 and a half.
Even 13, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is not a math show.
No, it's
not what we're here for. Bob, what do you got? You got some heat?
My hot take is that James Franklin coaches so well that they give him basically a 10-year contract worth $90 million.
You're trying to wind me up over here.
Oh, wait, that already happened. That's not even a hot take. That was real. But he was
getting rewarded just for playing Ohio State close.
He was 11-11 coming into the season over his previous 22 games. Oh goodness, hot take. I don't know. I could see Penn State having an explosive gain, either run or pass, of 60 to 70 plus yards for a touchdown, because they have guys that are game breakers. I don't know. They won't be able to do it consistently because they're not good enough up front. But I could see a seam happening in the run game. I could see it if there is enough time, or a guy catching a high point and being able to pull one off. I don't think Penn State scores a lot of points, but I could see one of them.
One big explosive play.
Wow.
That's not quite as hot as benching 10.
No.
Well, considering that he held Iowa to 180 or 167 yards or whatever it was, 57 yards. Even with the penalty yards, they held them over to barely over 200 yards in total offense.
They went over the 88 that I projected for last week. So congratulations to Iowa for that.
Is it my turn or your turn?
You go.
Can I have two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. All right.
I'm not going to slow you down.
I know. So I've got two hot takes. Okay. Number one is I believe this Ohio State offense jumps out, and everyone's talking about the Penn State secondary, and this is the first real matchup that they've had from that standpoint. I think the Ohio State offense goes completely off, just completely off, and I think they throw up 52 or 60 points. I think it's one of those games that Ryan Day's like, hey, the rest of the country is saying we haven't played anyone. We're going to go on the road, and I'm sorry. I know you went there. I apologize. Okay. But I think Ohio State puts up over 50 points on offense and just starts from the very beginning, and you are going to see C.J. Stroud take shots down the field and challenge those DBs all game long, and it's going to be from the snap. And it's been, Ohio State went deep last week, but it was way into the second half, right? They haven't been taken as many of those. Even Julian Fleming's had some massive gains. They haven't been taking as many shots as they did with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson as they have in the past. I think the top comes off. They light it up and go for a lot. My other hot take is, with the offense going off the way it is, I think Mayan Williams takes the key role at the running back position. And from here on out, he's going to run for 150 on Saturday, and after that, he's going to be the starting running back the rest of the year and be the number one guy.
It is warm over here.
Yeah.
Take a cold shower. Have a cigarette.
It's just the heat is emanating over from this side of the table. I think so. We've said all week, shows with Bill and Berm, they believe it's going to be close. We're going to give score predictions in a minute. I don't think it will be. I think Ohio State is going to win this game comfortably. The one area that I am continuing to watch, it started in week 1, and it got slightly better heading into Wisconsin, and I think it's regressed in the last couple of weeks. The only way I think that Ohio State can let Penn State's offense find some traction is when they take their best players off the field on the defensive line. So, what does that mean? Well, the defensive tackles, when Mike Hall and Teron Vincent are not out there primarily to stop the run, Penn State may be able to get some traction for a couple of those guys that you mentioned, Singleton, Katron Allen. Is that Allen? Katron Allen. Let those guys get some room to run. if Sean Clifford needs to get time, and let's just say JT Tuimoloau and Zach Harrison and Jack Sawyer are not on the field, that might be more possible. We've seen the decline when those top guys aren't out there. I just don't think there's enough depth to leave them out.
I mean, we've had a number of sacks this year.
He has, but what do your eyes tell you, Bob?
He can make plays.
All right. Well, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think that the best defensive linemen need to play in this game.
A lot.
And they need to play until they can't. I'm going to borrow a Zach Boren. Until they cannot breathe.
Well,
those guys need to be out.
No doubt.
We can rotate them a little bit.
They should be puking all over themselves if they need to come out.
You think
only to that point?
You think they've been building up to that? Like Mike Hall with his 7 snaps against Michigan State. Zach only played 20 last week. Like, is it to get them to this point so they can set them loose?
I mean, Zach played 20, but that was probably the most efficient 20 snaps he's ever played.
For sure, but why? And Bob will tell you, because when you play, there was nothing more than I wanted in a game to get as many snaps as possible, because when you get those snaps, you get into the rhythm of the game. You feel those bumps, and it's kind of like, I talk about reading and reacting all the time, and I hate to come back to this, but you almost get in that zone of, okay, I'm starting to anticipate things when you're out there so many times. When you're coming off the field, taking a break, going back out, you're like, man, I need to get that again, right? I need to get hit a little bit before that happens. And you can't just turn that on and turn it off. You see how rusty are guys going from, at the beginning of spring ball or beginning of the season to the end of the season. If you want to treat them like it's spring ball all through the entire year, and then towards the end of the year act like, hey, you got to go out there and play 60 snaps on defense, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I think that, the philosophy is not new for Larry Johnson. I've covered him for a long time. So if you, Bill, we know that that's what he wants to do.
Bill loves Larry Johnson.
Rotate. Most people do love him. He's got a great reputation for a reason.
He's the best. My brother was there with him. He goes, he's like the black grandfather I never knew I didn't have.
Yeah,
because he is a warm presence and
so
nice.
Loves Santa Claus.
Great,
and that's great too.
Do you love Santa Claus, or you love Santa Claus?
Well, Larry does.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe he hates Santa. That's why he uses him as a profanity. I don't know. I guess maybe I didn't think that through. Hates Santa. Hates Christmas.
Stop it.
Larry Johnson, that is not true at all.
Stop it.
Larry Johnson's a fine American. Don't you besmirch his good name.
Okay, I won't. As I said, he's a legend, and we know what his approach is with rotating defensive linemen.
12 guys.
The fact that so I asked him directly about it a few weeks ago when he spoke in the team room in the Woody. He was like, well, I still believe that it's better to have guys fresh and ready to rush the passer in the fourth quarter. That, I think, is the problem with I think, or at least that's where I disagree with him. How about that? You can win the game when you're Ohio State in the first and second quarter when this offense is so good. You shouldn't be thinking, let's get to the fourth quarter and then have our best players and win it. I just don't agree with that philosophy.
But it's not even that philosophy, because if that's the proper philosophy, why aren't they subbing in offensive linemen? Offensive linemen still have to pass block late in the fourth quarter.
It takes a lot more energy to play defense and pass rush than it does offensive line.
Bob.
It's just that's a reality.
Bob, you get my point. If you get off the field, and that's why you train all off season. That's why you go through mat drills. That's why you get pushed to your limits during the off season when you're in training. You do that, so guess what? In the field, you're looking across from the dude. He's got snot coming out of his nose. You got spit coming out of your mouth. And guess what? It's a who's going to man up more type of situation. That's what you want. You don't want
Is this a movie?
Yeah, come on. You don't want the fresh, clean jersey running out there in the fourth quarter against the dude who's sloppy, sweat, and ready to just keep on fighting. Come on.
Listen, I think Larry's probably a little too aggressive with it. I think you want your guys to be able to play at a high level late in the game when they're needed to be called upon. But I don't know if they need to feel like they're fresh as the daisies in the fourth quarter. Like, there's probably a happy medium where, you know what, usually about 60, well, that's a low end, probably more 70, 80 plays. Your best guys should probably be getting 2/3 of those. And it should probably be 2/3 in the first half. And if you need 2/3 in the second, if you have to rotate then because you don't need it, whatever. But they should be getting the majority of those snaps. And I think that's where you say, like, they're not getting that. They're getting half to maybe less, and they're probably over-rotating a little too much.
Maybe this will be the week that it all stops, as Bill said.
Hey,
don't hold your breath.
I heard listen, for him and Quinn Barnum, who played for Larry, the strength coach, they're playing Kanye Homecoming. They're walking into that stadium again. Let's not forget this. Larry was there.
Are they still allowed to play Kanye? Texas A&M was like, nah, we can't do that.
Texas A&M is saying no, then that might be the threshold right there. 'Cause Texas A&M, they do whatever they want.
Once you've lost the Aggies, you've lost everything. Aggies and Adidas. That's a conversation we don't really have to have. Let's instead just talk about what the score is going to be. Bill, you've done this a number of times. We'll see if yours remains the same as it was yesterday. And Bob, you made one Monday. We haven't got one from Zach, but we're going to do it all again.
What my score was Monday?
I have no idea.
Bob doesn't either.
It's documented.
Yeah, well, we can go back and look and see how it changed over the course of a week. But you know what? When we do multiple shows, you get to think, and your thoughts evolve throughout the week. So we've got a new perspective. Bill, have your thoughts evolved?
No. I'm still.
No.
I don't do a lot. There's not a lot going on up here. I'm still at a touchdown win for Ohio State. There are a lot of reasons why it could be and should be a blowout, and you guys have laid that out. I kind of feel like that every year, and then it's not. And I can't.
Where did you go to college?
I went to the Pennsylvania State University. Yeah, but I'm not picking them to win.
The Commonwealth, the State
Commonwealth.
University of the Commonwealth.
That's right. I think Ohio State.
Did you know? What is today? March or October 27th?
Yeah, it's not March.
It's
Bob.
the birthday of Philadelphia, by the way.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah, well,
I did not know
today
that.
it's today's birthday.
I should.
No,
You should. The city of brotherly love, where they boo Santa and fight like drunks in the vet.
Yeah, that happens. They threw snowballs at Santa, I think.
Yeah,
to
of
be
course. Why
specific. Yeah.
I thought you were gonna give like some Benjamin Franklin.
No, today is the
quote or
birth. Today was the
something,
founding of Philadelphia, the establishment in the Philadelphia and the Commonwealth. Of
I
Pennsylvania.
honestly cannot believe that Bill did not know that. That's got to
He's
be
from Philly.
They have to grease down the
Him
phone.
and Will Smith are from West Philly, born and raised.
No, different part of the city. Jim Knowles is from close to that area, though.
He is. That's why Jim Knowles is tough. Give me a yard and I'll defend it.
31-24.
31-24.
Jim Knowles also aspired to be from West PA or Ohio because he said that's where the real football was played.
That's right.
Direct quote from him, which I heard that. He's like, I always admired those guys. Was kind of jealous and envious of them. Like, I appreciate you for saying that, Jim. Like, that's a great deal.
Bill didn't like it. He almost threw a snowball at him.
Exactly.
Well, it's better now. Philly high school ball is good now.
Exactly.
Look at Marvin. Look at Marvin
in the
Harrison.
city too. I mean, there's a lot more murders going on now. It's a lot tougher place. More
Bob, give your
crime,
score.
more violence. I'm going to say
That's wild cards. That's where wild card football
yeah, it is wild cards. There's a place called Glen Mills over
I know
there.
the Glen Mills school.
Glen Mills played Lancaster High School. It's basically like a California Penal League. I mean,
A friend of mine's father was a superintendent of that school. Yeah,
and like basically head prison guard is what Glen Mills was.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, they came into Lancaster, and my dad was like, "Whoa, that dude's like a lot of shankability on that team. Lots of
They're
shankability."
99.
Oh.
Madden
24 years old.
there might have been some dudes that were 20 years, 23, 24 years old. They actually drove from Philly to the game. Oh, goodness, this is tough. It's a 15.5-point line now. That thing is ballooning. Ohio State can throw the ball on anybody. I think they're going to want to run it. I know this secondary is good, but if you give someone ample time to throw, especially as accurate as C.J. Stroud, it's not going to matter with those receivers. I don't know what I said earlier in the week. The more I think about this, Penn State's offense is not very good. Because their line is bad. Ohio State will feast on them up front. They will not have a hot take of one big play, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go 35-13.
35-13. I have 45-13. I'm sticking with what I said on Monday.
Wow. Going
all the way through. Ohio State winning comfortably. Zach, I think, is going to take it even further than that.
I am, because
like that one in the horseshoe or 63-10 or whatever it was.
Yeah, but you want to know something.
Allen
because
Robinson had like the one lone play.
Here's the thing: is the Ryan Day that really we all know, and I think people are Buckeye Nation starting to see that Ryan Day is the guy who is so great from a personality standpoint, spokesperson of Ohio State football, great for the players. But he's a guy that wants to kick people's ass, and he wants to send a message. There's a competitive side of him that he's not only like Jim Tressel. He's got some Coach Meyer in him, right? Coach Meyer's a guy that just wanted to hammer people, right? And so
kind of like Joaquin Phoenix in Gladiator.
No doubt. Exactly. Just like that. Yes.
And the thumbs down.
Right.
Finish him off.
Exactly. And there's times where Ryan Day pulls the horses back. He's going to let him go. And so I've talked about some hot takes about this offense. He wants to show the rest of the country that, hey, stop talking about us not playing anyone. We're going to go into Happy Valley. We're going to beat Penn State, and we're going to beat them 52-13.
Wow.
And I think
he did take it one step.
I did.
I raised Bob, and then you raised me again.
I raised him again another touchdown. If you were doing the math, I raised him another touchdown. That went on in my head. So
the math show.
Yes, the math show. So that did go on in my head. But I just think Ohio State wants to send a message to the rest of the country. Here's the other thing. I've talked about it again. Heisman Trophy recruits players. Ryan Day is starting to see Hendon Hooker and some of these guys catch up on C.J. Stroud. He knows C.J. Stroud can win the Heisman Trophy. He knows what that will do for Ohio State. He's going to put C.J. Stroud in a position to go on the road, that marquee game, say, hey, that's his Heisman game. That's where he did it. It's going to be this week.
I mean, they already have, Raiola already committed. Crystal balling like the number 2 player, right? The number 1 receiver out of Florida.
But Bob,
what else do they need?
Recruiting's changed, though. It's not Heisman Trophy isn't just the quarterback now. The offensive lineman wants to go where the Heisman Trophy is. The defensive end wants to go where the Heisman Trophy is. We've seen it with Oklahoma. We've seen it with Alabama. The Heisman Trophy isn't just
want
for,
to go where the Heisman Trophy is.
No doubt. It isn't just where, and guess what? Good football players want to go where the co-eds are at, right? It's all cyclical.
Up and down and around.
A circle. Yeah,
Nice, Jim Dillon.
Yeah. So that's just, I think Ryan Day's going to go out, throw out the horses, and just pull out stuff that he's been just waiting on for a game like this.
Well, if that doesn't get you fired up for 1 day from now at noon in Happy Valley, I don't know if anything will. It's Ohio State and Penn State. We are excited to bring you more coverage of that at the podcast and at ohiostate.rivals.com. Appreciate Bobby Carpenter and Zach Boren, as always, for their insight, analysis, and stories, and a lot more that didn't make it on the air because we're not allowed to talk about it. That's Bill. I'm Austin. Enjoy weekend kickoff and in what's coming on Saturday, and we'll break it down after the game. Enjoy it.